Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. I've always been a fan of history, American history as well as English history. The inauguration of our presidents, the bicentennial, the events in English history, it all fascinates me. I remember getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to set my VCR to tape the wedding of Prince Charles and Princess Diana. In fact, I had it set up the night before, but I was afraid that I might have done something wrong, so I got up early just to check and see if everything looked okay. And then I remember watching a few moments of it live before I went on to get ready for work. And then I watched the marriages of Harry and Meghan, and also Kate and William. And then, of course, the Queen's funeral. And today, for the coronation of King Charles, I didn't get up as early as I did years ago because I set my DVR to watch the event without losing sleep. I'm just going to give some observations of what I thought watching the coronation today. First up, looking at the church, Westminster Abbey is such a magnificent looking church. It's amazing what they could do in that early time when they created such a masterpiece. It took 400 workers at a time. That included stone cutters, marblers, stone layers, carpenters, painters, their assistants, marble polishers, smiths, glaziers, plumbers, and general laborers. I didn't realize it, but they said the church is shaped like a cross, so that's really interesting. The coach and the carriage. King Charles and Queen Camilla started the ride in a coach called the Diamond Jubilee carriage, and that one has heating and air conditioning and shock absorbers. And it's pulled by 6 Windsor gray horses. The return to the palace after the ceremony, they went in a gold carriage, and that was going to take 8 horses because the carriage is so heavy. They returned to the palace using the gold coach, and a reporter out there in the crowd said it was Australian made. It looked so regal and heavy, and I read that Queen Elizabeth didn't like to ride in it because it was uncomfortable. The carriage had been used to take the royalty from Buckingham Palace to the Abbey since 1066, and the Queen said it's only sprung on leather, so it's not very comfortable. Well, you could see the King and the Queen looking out at the crowd, and the King was smiling, and they said Camilla was nervous, and I can imagine she was, being center stage for the country all day. I love how the horses in the ceremony pranced around like they knew it was a special day and they were in on it. And the center of attention. Music was played along the way with some playing instruments on horseback, which is very cool. Next, the robes. King Charles wore the robes of his grandfather, and Camilla wore the robes of Queen Elizabeth. So what an honor that must have been for them. And the pages for the Queen were her grandsons and great-nephew. And Prince George was on one of the King's pages. He was the youngest one, but did his job well. They asked on TV, the commentators, how Prince William and Kate must be feeling, and one of the commentators said proud, but also nervous that he wouldn't mess up. He didn't, and did a great job. Everyone was dressed stylishly for the ceremony. There were invitations sent to the Commonwealth near and far. Also, regular English citizens that were in charities that Charles had worked with were invited. So it was a little bit of royalty and a little bit of the everyday man. So that's great. Security, it took 11,000 police and 400 members of armed forces, and a few were used to take some protesters away, and the crowd booed those trying to make trouble. Well, when Queen Elizabeth was crowned, not as many people saw it. TVs back then cost $85 and was too expensive for most people to have at the time in their homes. In 1953, 50% of Americans had TVs, and Britain had fewer than 2 million. So, because of the coronation, there was a huge number of British homes with TVs, and the numbers show from 763,000 in 1951 to 3.2 million in 1954. 27 million watched Queen Elizabeth on TVs at home or on screens set up in pubs, village halls, and cinemas across the country where it was broadcast on the BBC. Now, comment about the St. Edward's crown. It weighs 5 pounds, and she said, Queen Elizabeth said that her and her father had the same shaped head, so that when they put it on you, it stays, and it just remains itself. And she said you can't look down to make a speech up to eye level, because if you did, your neck would break or it would fall off. So there are some advantages to the crown, she concluded, but otherwise they're quite important things. So once Charles was crowned with the St. Edward's crown, it was changed to the imperial state crown. It's lighter and has some of them the most important diamonds and precious stones, and the crown he wore from Westminster Abbey to Buckingham Palace. And Queen Camilla chose Queen Mary's crown, which was made in 1911 for King Charles's great-grandmother, the consort of King George V. But Prince Harry and Andrew, well, they showed Harry entering the cathedral looking relaxed and not in uniform. He did wear some medals on his jacket, and he nodded to people that were seated. And it must have felt strange for him to be there 3 rows back instead of at the front of the audience. The prince wasn't at the balcony when the military flew by, but neither was Andrew. I don't think they were invited, because I think it was just for the working royals. And Andrew was allowed to wear the Navy Garter robes, even though he wasn't a working royal. And it said that maybe King Charles is softening his approach to his brother. They met several times at recent months to discuss Prince Andrew's future. Prince Andrew, he was booed by the crowds on the grandstand as he drove down the mall in a state car ahead of the coronation service, according to telegraph.co.uk. And the crowd, they were out in full force. And one of the commentators said they were cracking open their champagne, even though it was 8 o'clock in the morning. And the other commentator said that that's okay, they're off on Monday. So even in the rain, they were embracing the day and the occasion. And they had large screens of TVs for the crowds to watch the ceremony live. Well, thoughts of the ceremony inside Westminster Abbey. King Charles sounded so regal when he had to make his statements there. I loved the horns, and it was interesting to hear different music from the choir. The choir must have felt honored to be there, and it's something they'll never forget. And I liked the color of the chairs that the king and queen sat on, pinkish in color and very pretty. And the arches in the church were amazing to look at. And I'm glad the ceremony was religious in nature, and it shows that it is God who's the leader, and the king just does as God wishes. Crowning the queen, Camilla looked nervous. I know I sure would have been. Her crown was beautiful, too. She looked like she didn't want to walk too fast when she stood up or have a chance of her crown falling off. And for the first few moments, you could tell she realized that crown was on her head, but after a little while, she relaxed and it looked more natural on her. And I love the screen that shielded Charles on his anointment. And it was very pretty with the tree, and it looked sturdier than the canopy that Queen Elizabeth had. I didn't realize that they had to change clothes so much in the ceremony. Well, the king did, anyway. And it's amazing that the throne King Charles sat on was 727 years old and was used during the crowning of 26 English monarchs over the past 7 centuries. And I liked the orb that represented the places he would reign over. Prince William's pledge to King Charles. Prince William's pledge to the king was moving. Prince William said, "I, William, Prince of Wales, pledge my loyalty to you, and faith and truth I will bear unto you as your liege man of life and limb. So help me God." And he kissed King Charles, and Charles said, "Thank you, William," in a low tone. Crowning of the king. I imagine King Charles was remembering the day his mom was coronated, and how, when he was a child, he remembered her practicing wearing the crown to get used to it. Well, the bishop had to do some twisting to get the crown to fit on Charles's head, but it was done. All I can think of is how heavy Queen Elizabeth said it was. Luckily, it was only worn for a little while, and then replaced with a more mobile crown that is much lighter. And once the crown was put on, things got much lighter and more celebratory. They shouted, "God save the king," with a military gun salute and a cheer from the crowd outside. That was very well done. God save the king. Everyone was singing with gusto in the church, and little Louis was really belting it out. So leaving the church, it was wonderful to hear the bells ringing, and the king and the queen entered the carriage, and it looked so regal looking in gold. And the horses looked great. It was their grayish color, and then they had that real blue color on them. It looked really nice against that gold carriage. And William and his family left in another carriage, and Prince Louis was taking it all in and waving to the crowd. And then the balcony. After returning to Buckingham Palace, the crowd outside was led to the balcony, and they all waited in excitement for the king and queen to appear. It's estimated that 62 million pints would be served over the weekend in celebration, and the people were wearing crowns and royal robes, and there was Union Jacks all around. A reporter said the crowd could have stayed home because of the rain, but they braved the weather and wanted to enjoy the experience. And everyone gathered near the balcony to cheer King Charles, Camilla, and family. It was a joyous time for all, as the crowd cheered, waved their hands, waved their flags, wore crowns in some cases, some in regal-looking robes and crowns, and lots of children on the shoulders of their dads, all smiling and all knowing they had just been witness to history. Camilla looked a bit starstruck at the crowd, and King Charles tried to stay stoic, but he couldn't help but grin at the large, enthusiastic crowd. He may have wondered if he would draw a large crowd due to the popularity of his mom, who was a hard act to follow. The crowd eased his mind and helped him to always remember this special day. So traditions are wonderful because they help to center us and to help us to be who we are and where we came from. And the rain didn't dampen the spirits of the people and the royal families themselves. Everyone respected the day and knew they saw history in the making. It was a happy moment, and a moment Queen Elizabeth would have enjoyed seeing herself. And she probably was watching. I hope everyone enjoyed the video, and if you did, if you could give it a thumbs up, that would be great. And I also hope everyone's been having a good day. If you click on the notification bell, you'll be notified when a new video is released. So tune in again soon for another episode of Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Thank you. Bye.